Good morning and welcome to this morning's episode of the St. Augustine Chronicles. Thank you for joining me. Today in studio, I have Stuart Korfhage, who is currently the managing editor for the Jacksonville Business Journal. Is that right?
Correct.
Thank you. And formerly the editor for the St. Augustine Record.
Yes, among many other jobs there.
Yes, among many others. So I'm really excited to talk to him about, his story, how he got here, but also how journalism has evolved over the past 20 years and the positives and the negatives to that. Before we get into our interview, let's do our sponsors. The Kookaburra Coffee, proudly founded in St. Augustine in 2012, the Kookaburra is your local home for fresh roasted coffee and made from scratch baked goods. From legendary Aussie meat pies to scones and sweet pastries, everything is crafted to pair perfectly with their signature coffees. Whether you love a smooth, flat white, a bold Aussie iced coffee, or their famous Honey Badger latte. With multiple locations throughout St. Augustine, the Kookaburra is part of the community and part of your daily routine from morning commutes to weekend strolls. The Kookaburra, Aussie coffee, St. Augustine local. I'll also just add, as I've said many times on this show, I love the Kookaburra's hot chocolate. I love cold days because it gives me a reason to get one or sometimes two Kookaburra hot chocolates that day. But this past week, I tried their Alaskan hot chocolate, which is essentially just a fantastic chocolate milkshake. Oh my gosh, that was so good. So if you haven't yet, on a hot day, try the Kookaburra's Alaskan hot chocolate. And then our second sponsor is my brokerage, 97 Park, residential and commercial real estate. Looking to buy, sell, or invest in property in St. Augustine? Trust 97 Park, your local residential and commercial real estate experts. From historic homes to business spaces and investment properties, 97 Park delivers market knowledge, smart strategy, and personalized service every step of the way. And when you're ready to make your move, contact me, Karen Zander, directly at 904-297-3471. 97 Park, real estate done right here in St. Augustine. And a little note on my brokerage, we do not, have never, and will never charge any transaction fees. That's very rare in the business. We earn our commission, every dollar of it, and we do not charge any additional fees. All right, let's get into our interview. So, Stuart, first question I always ask is, what brought you here?
What brought me here was to work at the St. Augustine Record.
What year was that?
2000. And for those of you who have been around here long enough to remember, St. Augustine was still a pretty sleepy town in those days when it wasn't the high season for tourism. There were still, they still had the horse and carriage rides right down King Street. Because I would always be stuck behind one when I was going down, because I worked at the old building down. And
I was going to ask if you worked at the old building.
Yeah, so on Cordova,
So for people who haven't been here a long time, the St. Augustine Record was based downtown in this beautiful old building on Cordova, but it wasn't in the greatest shape.
Crumbling. Oh, yeah.
How did that function?
I have no idea. I mean, literally.
Did you have working toilets?
Sort of. There were windows that were never fixed. So even in the winter or summer, I mean, there were just holes in windows that never were fixed.
And was that from the 1800s or early 1900s, that building? Do you know? I mean, the windows were original, remember. Right?
Probably not the ones I'm thinking about, because the building was sort of Frankenstein together as well. You know, like the press room and whatever, which is gone, by the way. I think it looked like it was put up with press board and and maybe some duct tape as a roof. I mean, it was awful. Every time I would walk in, I was afraid I was going to fall through the floor. That is not an exaggeration.
And they ran that big newspaper, well, what was then a big newspaper for our little town. They ran that newspaper out of that building.
They didn't put a nickel into that building for I don't know how many years. Now, the publisher had a very nice office. So if you ever came in and visited then it was Ronnie Hughes, his office was very nice. The rest of it, I mean, I'm going to tell you this. I walked in that building for my interview, and I was not like some kind of big hotshot interview hire. I mean, I was just like, if I didn't show up, they'd just found some other schmo to take my job. And I walked in, and I seriously considered walking right back down the steps and just getting in my car and saying, nope, this is not going to happen.
Who owned the Record back then?
It was Morris Communications, who owned the Times-Union in Jacksonville.
Were they based in Jax?
No, they're based in. They were based in I can't think of the name of the town. Not Athens. Where's
Georgia?
the Masters?
Augusta.
Augusta. That's where they're corporate. I never went. I was never invited. I never got important enough to make that list at any time. No.
So was this? Did you come right out of college?
So no, I'd worked several jobs at that point. I was.
Where are you from originally?
I'm from Kentucky, but I went to school at Ball State University, and I worked in a small town called Wabash, Indiana, for a couple of years out of college.
Was journalism your degree?
Yeah, journalism English. I got an English degree, journalism minor actually. But it's pretty much all the same. Basically, you work at the student newspaper and you figure out right away if you can do that as a career or not. So I worked quite a bit doing that stuff.
And what did you like about it when you decided you wanted to do it?
I didn't know about it. I'd wanted to do it for years because I grew up. Every morning we got the newspaper like most people did back in the 80s and the 90s, and especially like in the summertime, my brother and I would race to who got up in the morning first to get to the newspaper so we could like read the baseball box scores.
That was
the thing I remember.
I know you're into sports. Weren't you the sports reporter at some point?
I've done, yeah. I was sports for a very long time here, which was sort of an accident. I mean, I love sports. I still love sports. I didn't necessarily mean to get into sports writing, but it just sort of happened that way. And yeah, so I did sports here. Gosh, I don't know, more than a decade. But yeah, I did sports in Indiana. I'd done sports in Hilton Head, South Carolina for a couple of years. Why
did you ever want to leave Hilton Head?
I couldn't afford to live there.
Oh.
Yeah, I was making something in the low 20,000s a year living there. And even in the 90s, I mean,
yeah,
that was not very much money.
Yeah.
We had a great place, a little town home that was actually on the island. God knows what it's worth now. And we loved it, my wife and I. But we're like, we can't have a child here. Like, we would have to spend another $500 a month to get a place that was, had 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't going to work. And I went to Tallahassee for a short time, which was way cheaper to live. But I didn't really like my job. I liked the people I worked with. I worked for the Tallahassee Democrat. I was doing sports pages. I wasn't writing. I was just putting together the pages.
So what does that mean? Designing them?
So yeah, I'd do a variety of things, but like sometimes some part of my job was I'd have the blank screen, and that would put all the stories on the page.
How was that done back then?
I say
back then, like it's 1800s.
Back in my day. Back when they were printing things. It was all computer generated. There was no paste up or anything like that. I didn't do that until I went to the Record, which was like taking a step back in time. I always tell people it was more like a newspaper museum than it was an actual newspaper. I mean, the stuff that like you read about, I'd never done before. Like, oh my gosh, they're still doing that here. The machines.
Some of the people who worked there were kind of relics as well. I'll just say
there was some of that. It was a weird mix. It was a weird mix. Like, because there were people that were younger than me. I was in my 20s. And there were people younger than me, and then there were people,
60s,
my parents' age, who had been doing that for a long time.
But the knowledge and the stories that they could create, the knowledge they brought and the stories that they could create of St. Augustine and its history must have been just so interesting. And you can't replace that in a city like this.
You want to talk about a resource? I mean, you talked to like Ann Hyman and Margot Pope.
Yeah.
They knew everybody.
And everything.
Fred Whitley, those kind of guys. I mean, they were, you needed to find what's happened. You didn't need to look it up. You just went and talked to them because they knew. And they knew 7 other people who were there also doing the same thing. You know what I'm saying? And they knew how to get a hold of them.
Yeah.
Which is an amazing thing. I mean, when
in journalism,
when Margot Pope calls you, and probably still today, if Margot Pope calls you, you're going to call her back.
Yeah.
I mean, she could get anybody on the phone any time of day under any circumstance.
Yeah.
And that's an amazing skill.
She's somebody I want to have on the show.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, so you came out of, you grew up in Kentucky.
Yeah.
You came, and then you went to Ball State, which is in Indiana, right?
Correct. Muncie, Indiana.
Yep. Then you worked in Indiana, you worked in Hilton Head, then you went to Tally, doing sports, which, I mean, it couldn't have been that bad because there was a college there at least.
Well, it was fun in a lot of ways because it was the year that Florida State won the national championship in football. Chris Winkie, and Peter Warwick.
Yep.
And getting to put that section together, like, you'd be in the newsroom. It was exciting. I'd be in the newsroom and you'd be watching the game and you're trying to put things together on deadline. And, you had to get that thing out as fast as you could and doing all that. I mean, that was really a lot of fun. And we put a special section together for it. And
did you save anything like that?
I think I have the special section still that we did, which is really just, we sort of put a collection of things together, from what had happened all through the year. So you had a chronicle of all the games in a magazine form go through, which was interesting because we had to put it together before the national championship game.
Just in case they won.
Yep. So if they lost, all that work, trash.
Yeah. It's like when people die, famous people die, and they've already got the obituary already ready to go.
But they're going to die at some point.
Yeah, true.
That's going to happen. It might be 10 years, might be 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one it could have been all for naught.
Yeah.
So that was fun. I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the people I worked with, like I say, and it was a great experience. I learned so much working at that was the biggest paper I'd worked at.
I was just going to say Tallahassee must have been the biggest.
So, which is not a huge paper, but I mean, it's sort of on an island. If you've ever been to Tallahassee, there's nothing else around it.
Yeah. Plus, Tallahassee being the seat of government in the state, it does have relevance.
And nobody covered Florida State like our staff did. We had a guy named Steve Ellis, who was the basketball reporter. Amazing journalist. So it was well. They had some people that had been there a long time and really know their stuff, and I learned a ton by working with them. But I was also working nights, and I was working. I think my days off were Monday and Tuesday. So like my wife and I never had a day off together. So you can imagine lifestyle wise, it was not ideal.
Long. Yeah.
No.
What was it like for you to come to Florida and experience the Florida football in Tallahassee, Florida State? Like that's a whole culture. I know that I grew up in Wisconsin, so I know the Big Ten. I know, Indiana sports is big, but when you're in Tallahassee working on the sports pages and there's just this culture and that would have been Deion Sanders wasn't that far removed.
Correct. Yeah, he had just left. I don't know how many years ago before that.
He brought a bunch of attention.
Right, and that was before they'd really had their lean times, as they've had not every year. Obviously, they had some great seasons, but they've had a few really down seasons.
Yeah.
I mean, Bobby Bowden was at his height, in those days, and I mean the whole thing. I mean, everything in the sports world just revolved around Florida State, and that whole part of the country.
Yeah,
if you think about it, there's nothing else over there.
Yeah, that's what I mean. That must have been different for you to experience.
It was interesting, yeah, but for me, it was like the same thing, except where I grew up, it was basketball.
Yeah,
because Louisville and Kentucky had this amazing rivalry, and they were two of the best programs, in the country when I was growing up.
I'm going to tell you something interesting. My father was a very, very, very good basketball player. He still has records that will never be broken in where I grew up in Wisconsin, and so he was heavily recruited. He graduated in 1954 from high school, and he was recruited by Kentucky.
Oh, wow.
But he chose not to play there because my father grew up very poor. His father passed away when he was 3. He was the youngest in the family. My grandmother never learned how to drive a car. And so while he had older siblings who could drive, he realized that if he went to Kentucky, his mother would never be able to see him play college ball.
Oh,
so he chose to go to the University of Wisconsin at Madison and play for the Badgers rather than to play in Kentucky. But I'm pretty sure it was Kentucky, I think. My story might have been all irrelevant if I'm wrong.
Let's say it is.
Didn't Wilt Chamberlain play at Kentucky?
Wilt Chamberlain,
I think he did
not play at Kentucky.
No,
I don't believe.
Maybe it was Missouri that I'm talking about. Could have the whole story wrong. Never mind. Kansas. Sorry, got it all wrong. Just forget that. Never mind. Started with a K.
Kansas, though, also one of the most storied programs in the entire country. So
yeah,
it's also an amazing university for sure.
Yeah, but not relevant at all. Just took us off track.
But it was like that. It was like growing up, with me in the 80s, and like Louisville won a couple championships in the 80s. Kentucky won in 78, and then they won another in, I don't know what year they won in the 90s, but they were in the Final Four all the time. I mean, incredible programs. So it was kind of like that, except with football.
Yeah.
Whereas in Kentucky, football is not as big.
Yeah.
We've had some seasons here and there, but yeah, I mean, it was just fun because being in a town the size of Tallahassee, it's kind of a small, big town, right? I mean, it's the whole culture kind of revolved around that. And there's also a really strong following for Florida A&M as well. Yeah, there absolutely is, especially in those days. They were at the 1AA level or whatever they call it now. was it FCS? Yeah, FCS. They were very good in those days at that level. So there's a very strong following at that school,
and a very strong hatred of Florida Gators.
There's a little of that.
So you were doing sports there, and then was it your schedule that just made you say, I can't keep doing this?
Mostly, yeah, that, and I think I really wanted to get back to writing and not just doing editing and design. Design is really not. I'm not an artist. I can do it competently, but not. Some people just have that gift, right? They can make these pages.
Excuse me.
They're just magical, and I don't have that ability.
I'm surprised that they would put a reporter on the design of a page.
Well, I wasn't hired as a reporter in those days.
Oh, you weren't?
No, I was just doing design.
But
you had to learn. You had to learn everything in those days.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like when I was in Indiana. When I was in Indiana, I was the sports department. So I wrote the stories. I did my own editing, which was terrible, by the way. It's very hard to edit yourself.
Yeah.
And I would put all the pages together, and I would take phone calls and write up little things from the. So I did everything. So yeah, I knew how to do everything. I did do all the jobs, which, as it turned out, was really helpful. And even today, I'm still using those skills because we still put out a printed paper at the Business Journal. So I'm not doing it. I'm not as involved as I used to be in that process, but I still have to know how to use those programs and how to write headlines and that sort of thing. It's still relevant.
So you came to St. Augustine. You were hired to do the sports reporting.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And how long were you doing that until you switched over to more business or local reporting?
So there were some other things that switched in between. I'm not going to get through all of it, but I went back and forth and doing some other things besides sports. I left sports, then came back to sports, and I don't know what year that was, 2003, 2004, something like that. I can't remember. And then I did that until about 2013, I think, is when I started covering news. And it just helped that I had been living here for so long and kind of knew some things. Yeah. Although I still had to learn so much about whether politics, government, who's who, what's going on, that sort of thing.
Well, this is a very good old boy town, and it's not only good old boys, but that's just the way we say it. You know, good old women too. But it took me a long time to realize how much that still exists here, and that you have to pay your dues and do your time, and you know, you kind of have to know the right people in order to break into that world. I got lucky. I don't know if you feel that way, but I feel that I got very lucky in meeting certain people that helped me to break in. But I was so surprised when I started working here that it was a very closed town. So I can imagine trying to report on things and coming from elsewhere, and especially with the people who were so entrenched in St. Augustine, having been at the Record for so many years, and you're not one of them. That must have been a real challenge.
It was in a lot of ways. People were very nice to me, though. I'm going to be honest with you. People were really, really nice, and we were very lucky. Like, one of the things that I did was cover the court systems for a little bit, and the judges that we had here at the time, and some of whom are still there, Judge Maltz, for instance, is still there. They were very serious about, you know, this is a public forum. We do everything in public. This is no secretive, which is just the way it's supposed to be. But there are some gray areas with some things. I mean, obviously not a trial, for instance, that's all going to be public. But they always made sure that they provided access. They didn't want any just hint of anything being covered up in any weird way. Like I'm sure you've read happen a million different places. So that really helped. You know, the people that I worked with at the sheriff's office were always very helpful. The people at the St. Augustine Police Department, very helpful. The beach, of course, but you don't have much stuff going on really at the beach. But sheriff, who now was at the beach then. Yeah. But everybody was very good to me, and I think they gave me a chance. And I really appreciated that because, you know, at the Record, we did have some of those people that had been around for a long time. But on the other hand, we also had just a churn of young journalists coming in and out of that place. And I couldn't even think about how many different people I worked with at that paper over the years. Some of them were very conscientious and good, and some of them were not. And so some people, I'm sure, got burned every now and again with people that maybe didn't take their job as seriously as they should have, or just had an agenda. I don't know. So they could have held a grudge and they didn't. And I really appreciate that. And I hope I treated everybody fairly. I certainly tried. I can't think of how many people over the years where I feel like I treated them fairly. I don't necessarily agree with what they're saying, but I respect them and I try to get things out. And I hope that helped me. I hope that's what helped me get my foot in the door with things.
Yeah.
That's why I always try to treat everybody.
And when you said it was around 2013 or so.
I think it's around there. Yeah.
They were in the new building then, right?
Oh yeah. We were in the new building in 2001 or 2, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so for people who haven't been here long, the new building was at the corner of 312 and 207, which is now the University of St. Augustine.
Now it's their new building.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they've totally redone it over there. Yeah. Looks beautiful, by the way.
But that was the record building, and that was way too big for the record at the time. I mean, they had all this extra space.
Everyone asked about that, and it's like the second we moved in that building, it was too big. Every year that I worked there, that building was too big for us. Yeah. It was always too big for us.
Yeah.
It should have been half that size.
Yeah.
And then for some reason, and I'll never understand it, again, I wasn't consulted on these higher level business decisions in the company.
Why not?
And that's fine. They have their, why did we not print in Jacksonville? It makes no sense. It was only 45 minutes away.
Yeah, cost savings.
Instead, we had this we bought the press. It wasn't new, but it was a refurbished press. This huge press and the building and all that kind of stuff. Why did we not just print it in Jacksonville?
Well, because you had to fill the building that they just bought.
Apparently, but eventually we did anyway, even though we had this building. So eventually we did move the printing up to Jacksonville, which I'm sure made financial sense.
Yeah.
Once that was gone too, then we had all of this space with nothing to do with it. But we could have, there were like 2 main buildings.
Yeah.
We could have got by with just the one.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily.
And I'm sure that...
And it was great. I love the building. I mean, I'm not complaining, but no, we never needed it. People would laugh about it. Like, how did you go from this little building to that big building? Well, it's half empty. That's how.
And I'm sure the staff was probably starting to shrink by then, wasn't it?
Yeah. One of the first things they did when we got there was shrink the staff.
Yeah. What a bigger building.
And they're like, oh, this isn't because of the cost associated with a big building, which of course it was. We had a security guard when we first got there. Yeah, that didn't last long.
Why? So nobody would scoop your stories?
I don't know why. I don't know why. They were very protective about it. They were like, oh, you can't have a cup in the thing without a lid on it. And they were really worried about the carpet. Then at some opening house party, somebody spilled wine on one of the carpets.
It sounds like maybe management needed some lessons on prioritizing for profit.
Yeah, I don't know. And they had this. I can say it now because they're all gone, and they can't get me now. They had this big, huge office, and I actually got to use it later at the very end. This big, huge office that wasn't for anyone. It was for whatever Morris was in charge to come down to have this big, giant office to himself for the 9 days a year that they may come down and visit St. Augustine. It was very bizarre. I mean, we had enough offices. There were plenty of offices, but it was funny. There's like this palatial office, and
you can't go in there.
No one was using it. Yeah, 99% of the time there was nobody in it.
That doesn't surprise me. Just thinking about how that all went down.
Yeah, it was funny. It was funny.
And in 2013-14, papers were still doing. Was that when papers were starting to have trouble? I can't remember when it all kind of started. I think it started
about the second I entered the workforce. That's the way it seems like. We were actually in recovery mode at that time, because really it was during the recession when we just got hammered, because everybody got hammered in those days. Around 2008, 2009, I can't remember. One of those years, we all got a pay cut, which was awesome.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Some people got furloughed, but we just got a straight pay cut. So we didn't even get the days off. So I don't remember what year that was. 2009, I want to say. Something like that. So yeah, 2013, whatever. That was probably better. Those are probably better years than the previous few years, honestly.
I don't remember when the internet really started being a thing where we went for news or to just find info on local stories or whatever, national stories. I can't really put a
It was such
date on
it was such an evolution. No, it happened gradually. At first it was, when I first got in the business, it was TV. That was sort of your main competition.
Yeah.
Um,
Because
and other
everybody
printed
did
products,
watch
obviously.
local stations.
And I mean, most TV stations, and they still do a ton of their programming is devoted to news.
Yeah.
They have the morning programs that some markets go on for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah, but who watches it anymore? Who watches local stations or news shows? Who watches that? I mean,
I would rather go on a website, honestly, and because I can get the stuff so much faster.
Yeah.
I'm bad in that. I don't consume a lot of video content.
Well, YouTube is so much easier.
I would rather read something in a minute than have somebody read it to me.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
That's just me, but that's just a personal preference.
So, yeah, I'm the same
I like
way.
to read things.
Yeah.
But so I don't know. And part of that we did get on, right? Because we had a website from the very beginning that I got here. So we were part of that as well. That was always part of our revenue. Nobody could really figure out how to capitalize on that fully, I think. We were trying to figure out, for a while there was, everybody put videos on. That was sort of a very short-lived thing, and we kind of tried that. But there was not the follow-through with the thought of doing video content is a different skill. I mean, it does take some skill.
Yeah, it does.
And
absolutely.
Most of us did not have that. So if you have amateurs putting on amateur videos, then it just kind of looks stupid.
Yeah, but in your defense, everybody was an amateur back then.
Yeah, but you're competing against the TV stations, guys, and they had their own websites when their video was pretty good, and ours, wasn't so much. I mean, we had some decent videographers, but like me, I don't really want to do a video.
Yeah.
That's not my skill set.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm good at.
Yeah.
And if you see my work ever with any kind of digital photography or video, I'm not very good at it. So anything I put up was probably not gonna really boost the sales for us.
So 2013-ish, you took on a different role.
Oh, I remember my first story, my first news story.
You do?
It was when because it was when the gas station blew up.
Oh yes,
just down here off Masters, right? Was the Masters, I think? Yeah.
Yep. Masters in 16.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was interesting. And then I ended up following that whole case through civil court as well, which is fascinating because usually those things don't end up going to court.
Right.
Usually they settle out of court. Yeah. But they ended up settling.
Coombs Station.
Yeah. And there was a civil thing, and it was kind of a weird verdict. I think it was 75%, 25% as far as the liability went, which was, I thought, pretty interesting.
Yeah, that was a big story.
And luckily, nobody got seriously hurt, and which was incredible. If you were there, I mean, you could feel the heat from before you could see it. You could feel it.
Well, I don't remember if it was JB, but somebody had the foresight to shut off the supply or something. I can't remember exactly how it went, but somebody
I can't remember either. Yeah, but somebody did. Yeah,
something down so it couldn't.
Maybe it was the gas station attendant. Yeah, but everybody, thank goodness, all got out.
Yeah.
So it wasn't. It was a financial tragedy, but it wasn't a human tragedy. Thank goodness.
Yeah. And now there's
it was good. So I could enjoy that. It was an interesting story for me. But I mean, I feel bad for anyone who lost property.
Yeah.
I don't mean that way, but it was an interesting story, and not
a big one.
Not a truly human tragic story.
Yeah.
So that's going to stand out in my mind. That was maybe the first or one of the first news stories I ever wrote.
So you were doing just general news. If I remember correctly, back then it was Sheldon Gardner that was kind of doing more of the local government stuff.
Sheldon did a lot of that, and as people came and went, as we lost positions sometimes, your beats kind of got mixed up a lot. I did a lot of different things as well. I don't even know what my beat was at various times. For a while, I was doing kind of courts, but everybody sort of did whatever they needed to do. Just depending on what was happening that day and who was tied up with something else. So it was a good way to learn about a lot of things and meet a ton of people. It was a good way to also figure out what you liked and what you didn't like, which is why I was happy to end up at the Business Journal. Because, for instance, I don't like going up to crime scenes. I'm not interested in covering crime, which is interesting because I actually like covering courts, but I don't like covering the crime.
So did you cover crime scenes?
A little bit, nothing major. I do remember one Thanksgiving having to drive out to 207 and 95 where they had to stop someone from Daytona Beach, I think, and had robbed someone or something. I can't remember the whole thing, but I remember they caught somebody on the interstate right there. So little things like that you had to do.
How do you find out about those and get there to while they're still an active scene?
So you don't most of the time. I mean, you can listen to your scanner all the time, the police scanner, but of course they ended up, that's different. They went to a different system now. Used to be anybody could buy a scanner.
Yeah, I remember that.
And you could listen to the whole police thing, and
and that was the thing people did.
Yeah, which is incredible because it's really, really boring. But some people do. But then they changed that, so it made it a lot harder. But what they do though, anytime there's any kind of disturbance happening, they put stuff. The sheriff's office will put stuff up on their Facebook really fast because they want people to stay away for one thing. Of course, that draws us in, but.
So you have to monitor that?
I mean, a little bit, yeah. And then a lot of times they would call you, they would email you, like the PIOs, as the communications person for the various agencies. They would often let us know, especially if they were going to do a quick press conference. They'd be like, hey, we're going to do this. They'd let you know. They'd send you a text or whatever.
Yeah. And
we would go out there and cover that. But I didn't really enjoy that. Going out to a press conference at a crime scene really doesn't do much for me. It's not that interesting.
Well, yeah, it's a canned presentation, right?
Yeah, it's hard to really find out what truly happened.
Right.
And I'm not saying that law enforcement changes anything, whatever, but it's still just their perspective.
Exactly.
And you usually can't get their perspective because the other person's usually in jail.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't want to say propaganda, but that's the word that comes to mind. But I don't want. That's not what I mean. But there's just this. It
is a one-sided thing, and that doesn't mean they're wrong or they're trying to be wrong about anything.
Yeah.
But it is one side.
Yeah.
And you can't get the other side.
Yeah, it's not really newsworthy.
So I never really enjoyed that part of it. That's just me.
So, how did you? Well, let me backtrack. So you were doing just kind of everything. And then as St. Augustine and the county grew, you must have gone further out from just downtown St. Augustine or St. Augustine Beach, which is kind of where you were focused before. How did you start to grow across the county?
Well, we decided we wanted to do more stories on growth. And but not that we hadn't covered that stuff before, obviously, but we tried to put a more of an emphasis on that. I think at one point my beat was like growth in business or something like that. I forget what they decided the title was. I didn't have anything to do with it, but so it was just in the 2000s or 2010s, I guess you would say. And there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, once we came
things were either just emerging or they were still some of these things were still being approved.
Yeah.
And so it was just a time where we just started paying attention to a lot of that news. I got to meet a lot of developers and, obviously a lot of people who were very much against those developments.
Yeah.
And I tried to talk to all those people. I have my own opinions about that, but I don't have an agenda about that. It's just, here's what happens. I don't control that.
Well, that's one thing I'm really curious about because I've read your stuff for years and years and years. And I think you really do keep your own personal opinion out of your reporting. I don't recall any story I've read that you've put out where I felt like I knew your angle, your personal feeling on it. How do you do that? It seems like it'd be really, really hard.
It is. I try really hard not to put that much of that in there. I mean, that's one of my absolute goals is to not put my agenda into any story. I have my opinions about things. I've lived here 26 years almost. And so, I have views on what I think about this community is good or bad. People I like and don't like necessarily. I don't say like, that's a bad word. People I may agree with or disagree with.
Yeah.
Because there are people I disagree with all the time, but I like them very much.
Yeah. Same with me, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
People think that, I don't know, I'm very capable of distinguishing between what they think about something and what I might think about them as a person.
Yeah, exactly. So and that's just the way I was trained. And I just feel like it's really important for me to try to, all right, what is this person's perspective? Okay, let's accurately portray what their perspective is. All right, and if it's a controversial issue, we say, okay, who's the other person on this side we're going to talk about? Let's portray their perspective accurately. And that's my job. My job is not to say, now, if someone is clearly falsifying this, then it's your job to point out, like, this person says this, however, XYZ, because we have the data to show that this is not correct or something like that.
I feel like you do that really well, though. I honestly don't remember.
I try really hard.
Yeah, I cannot recall any story I've read of yours where I've thought, oh, I get where his personal angle is on this. I can't. And, what a shame that I think that's lost now with the evolution of, the lack of journalism. I mean, the lack of local coverage. It's just people, the only way that people get their news now is from Facebook or from Instagram or from, I don't know, YouTube or what. I don't even know where they get it. So I think a lot of people don't get it.
Oh, there's a lot of that too.
But it's social media, and the social media seems as though it's always so slanted, and they don't tell the other side. And not only do they not tell the other side, but they manipulate what they're saying to meet their agenda.
Certainly.
And that's just what people are consuming now. It's such a shame.
Yeah, it is. It's tough to compete against that because what happens is people get to where they get in the silo, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, let's hear exactly what I want to hear.
And then the algorithms promote it.
Exactly. And then you start getting fed exactly the same stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's very difficult.
And there's no, in true journalism, when you're working for a paper, or I hope when you're working for some of the local news channels, I'm not sure, but I would think that there's a standard that you have to maintain where you don't manipulate the facts or you don't just push an agenda, right? But with the way we consume information now, that none of that exists. You can totally push an agenda. You can tell half a story. You can manipulate the facts, and nothing's stopping you. And you can put it out as if it's journalism.
Yeah, that's true, and it is hard. I think in a lot of ways, though, that is an advantage for somebody like us, like at the Business Journal, because look, I don't agree with everybody I interview for sure, and they say what they're going to say, and they may be building something that maybe I think, oh my gosh, this is going to be terrible for my community, but that's not my job to say that. If I want to have a campaign and do that kind of thing, then I can go do that on my own time. Well, I really can't on this job, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I would never do that.
How do you get that out to people when you're a true journalist, that I'm really not manipulating the facts? I don't, that's not what I'm here to do. My outlet doesn't want me to do that. How do you really, is it just by being fair in your stories repeatedly, or how, I
think that's the only way you can do it. And that's why, like at our organization, they're really big on maintaining the brand. And we talk about this at the higher level all the time with all of the whole company. I think we have about 50 business journals. And I hope that number's right. I could be totally wrong about that. I can't think we own a lot of business journals, but we all have the same principles about how we do things. This is our brand. This is the kind of stories we do. This is how we do them. And they've been doing it for years. And there have been good editors at that, at the Business Journal well before I got there, and they do things a certain way. And we just try to keep doing that a certain way. And, that's just kind of been our focus, and which is why you'll see that we don't do a lot of, and this is our brand. We don't do a lot of political stories.
Yeah,
we'll do a political story as in like city council approves XYZ development. Well, you have to do that, of course. But we don't get into the political squabbling about, well, this commissioner says this one. Yeah. I mean, that happens a little bit because it might affect like a big project. So you have to kind of get into that. But like, we don't do election results. But that sort of thing.
But that type of story where there's, for example, commissioners squabbling on the dais in a recorded meeting, that would have been what the Record would have covered. You would have done things like that.
I did lots of those things,
right?
yeah.
And that's not a bad thing because it is news and
absolutely.
It tells locals here's
how it's a lot easier than sitting through a 6-hour meeting.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when the beach was a lot of shenanigans. Now they're buttoned up and they're wonderful. But so that is is news and that is missing now. And I'm not saying the Business Journal should do that, because I agree it's not their focus. It's not. But what a shame that we can't get that anymore in a non-agenda-driven way.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have to kind of go back and there are other organizations that cover an issue here or there, and sometimes they do it well, and sometimes not so much. And
yeah,
whatever.
I mean, I think where we're sitting in the 904 Now studios, I think they really attempt to try to just say, "Hey, this happened," but. This is not a criticism, because I love the 904 Now morning show. I think they do a wonderful job, but they do offer their own opinions sometimes. I don't think it's as much as, and I don't think they're manipulating facts ever.
Right.
I've not seen that from the 904 Now, but it's still not the same as just a true, hey, this happened, that we used to have from local newspapers. Because it shouldn't be. It's a different format.
Absolutely, yeah. That's not necessarily
that's not
the audience.
The way it works anymore.
Yeah, so, and that's fine.
But what a shame. I feel like people are very much misinformed now, and it's not their fault, right? And I feel like
sometimes it is.
Well, true.
Some people want to be misinformed.
That's true.
They go out of their way to be misinformed.
That's true. But if you want to truly get, hey, this happened, and get an in-depth story about that, it's just really hard to find that without an angle to it.
Yeah.
It's super hard.
It's hard to do, and it's hard to sometimes it's hard to build an organization that way sometimes
because you need clicks now.
Well, and even here's the deal too, even at the top of organizations, your owner might have a very strong opinion about things.
Yeah.
Okay, well, gosh, if you're going to make people put that kind of opinion into things, well, you've already screwed up the whole thing.
Yeah.
And for my experience, I haven't had a lot of that. There have occasionally been stories that have been like, okay, we need you to do this story. But it wasn't like, oh, you have to write a pro story. But it might be, okay, well, you might have to write a feature story on this business that's doing this, which is truly unethical, I think. But are you going to quit over that?
Well, that's a question.
I mean, you can, but you're just going to be unemployed. That's not going to do any good. I think that's the farthest I've ever seen anybody push anything anywhere I've worked. Which, not liking that, but never like, oh, let's distort the facts of a story, or let's write a story with this whatever.
Right.
I've never been asked to do that.
Right. Which
is good.
So I want to go back to when you were at the Record, because at the time that the Record, or that you left the Record, I was going to say the Record folded, but I think it's still around, so shockingly.
It is.
It just is not relevant anymore. But at the time that you left the Record, you were the editor of the Record, right?
Yeah.
So
which didn't mean very much. There weren't very many. Weren't many of us left at that point.
But who decides what stories are covered? Is it the editor of it? When you were there, I should say, not now, but when you were there, did you direct what stories you wanted reporters to cover, or did reporters just do their own thing? How does that work?
Always a combination. The best run newspapers, or any news organization, I should say, are when you have reporters who are plugged in, and if you're the editor, they're telling you what they're writing. They're telling you what they're covering, because they know the beat so well, and they know what's happening. They know what the stories are, and my job in that instance is just to guide them. Just like, all right, let's not necessarily cover this thing, but let's cover I think this is a more interesting issue than that, or we already talked to this person like 3 times last week. Let's talk to this person instead, and just sort of fine tune what they're doing. But in the best run things, the reporters already know what the news is. It's not me telling them what the news is. It's them telling me, me being an editor at that position. It's them telling me this is the news, and say, okay, well let's talk about how to cover that best. That's when you're doing it. When you're always assigning a reporter something, they're not a good reporter. Now, it's okay when they're getting started. Maybe they're learning their beat, or they're learning the community or whatever. Yeah.
They would have no idea how to do it.
But, after a few months, they need to be telling you what the news is. That's the best way to do things. And then sometimes you'll then, as an editor, be like, oh, well, somebody came to me and said, this is an interesting story. And I'll be, I agree. I think we should probably cover this angle as well. Because nobody can know everything, no matter how plugged in you are. But it's really more of prioritizing. Okay, I like this story, but it's not really important now. Let's do it next week, or let's do this because I think this is more important. And we may disagree or whatever, but so ultimately, as an editor, you're saying, okay, I want to do this instead of that. And that's really your job when things are going well. If you're telling everybody what they have to cover, you don't have a very good staff.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I was so happy when the Business Journal hired you, because for several years prior to that, I would email them. I subscribed to the Jacksonville Business Journal, and I would email them, and because they did have a real business focus, which the Record wasn't really doing so much of at the time, I kept reading about Jacksonville, and even sometimes in their stories, they would talk about, we have the #1 school district in the state or the fastest growing county or something. And I'm like, no, you don't. We do. You can't continue to claim what St. Augustine and St. Johns County has as Jacksonville, Greater Jacksonville. Like, say it. It's not Greater Jacksonville. It's not Northeast Florida. It's St. Johns County. It's St. Augustine. And so I would email them like, every once in a while, the editor, and I would say, you need to do St. Augustine or St. Johns County stories with that focus. And I would tell them it's disrespectful and it's frustrating because you're claiming what we are doing here as yours. And so when they brought you on, I was so excited because I knew that you had spent so much time here. I knew the connections you had. I knew the background you had. And so I realized that they finally understood this economic engine that is St. Johns County's growth, and mainly residential growth. But that economic engine and the tourism engine that is St. Augustine, they realized that there was a reason to cover it. And they couldn't have picked a better person. I was so happy that they brought you on instead of just putting some Jacksonville reporter on it and saying, hey,
probably wouldn't even have been from Jacksonville.
Right.
It could have been from God knows where.
Right. Hey,
I want to move to Florida.
There. Yeah. So I was so excited. And so when did you go to the Business Journal? What year was
2021.
So since 21, I've read every story you've ever written about St. Augustine and St. Johns County. And I am always so impressed with not only the coverage and the fact that you don't have an personal angle to it. I think you are very down the center, but that when you get something that's a little more complex, you have all those years of knowledge that you bring to the table, and you go back and you say, hey, this is kind of how we got here. And I feel like you're unique in that. I don't think that there are many other reporters that cover St. Johns County and St. Augustine that can bring that perspective to the table. And that is so important because so many people have moved here recently.
Yes.
And so they read a story about some, let's say, development in a silo, and they have no idea how 10 years ago in that same area, this was a big deal. Or 20 years ago, this was already like World Golf Village.
Yeah.
World Golf Village has been permitted since way like 20, 30 years ago. I don't even know exactly when, but that whole, even the commercial stuff that's just now coming out of the ground, that's been permitted for years, way before most people in the county have moved here. So they complain about this development, but you go back and you say, hey, this was permitted then. And you even sometimes add a little bit about whether it was controversial or not. And so I think that what you bring to the table in your reporting and the way that you can cover stories is so unique. And for those of you who don't read the Jacksonville Business Journal, you really give a perspective that I think only you provide right now.
Well, thank you. I tried. I think what you'll see, too, is you look around the landscape, and there aren't many of us that have been doing this for very long.
Yeah.
Everybody, they come in, and then what do? They try to move up to the next level, that bigger market.
Yeah.
And I'm not,
You're happy here.
I don't want to denigrate anybody for doing that. That's how you move up. But I love living here.
Yeah.
I don't want to live anywhere else in Florida for darn sure.
Yeah.
And so I think it's tough for us. We have a real struggle just with that at the Business Journal. I mean, you're not getting rich working at the Business Journal, although we pay much better than the daily newspapers have. So you're going to get people come and go, and then you would try to get the best candidates, or then they're not necessarily from Northeast Florida. Although we do have one guy on our staff now who did go to UNF, which I'm very excited about to have that person. His name is Carter. Happy to have someone that has spent some time in the region.
Yeah.
But it's really hard to get people. And our editor, James, is a Jacksonville guy, although he's worked some other places as well. But he is a Jacksonville guy. So he understands that. And so it's just hard to keep people that grew up here and that stay around a little bit. So I think that's the hardest thing, just to keep that continuity. And what you're saying about understanding about the community and knowing what's a big deal or not, I think the biggest thing is having reporters who live in the community they cover. There used to be a requirement when I was a young journalist. They always made you live in the community where you covered. It doesn't happen as much now. I mean, in Jacksonville, all of our reporters live. I think everybody lives in Duval County except for me, and I live here in St. John still. And I think it's super important.
I agree.
And you can't be. I don't feel like you can live out in another county and then try to cover this county.
Yeah.
I mean, my kids go to school here. Well, they did go to school, but they graduated. My wife works in the community.
Yeah.
I go grocery shopping here.
Yeah.
I think it's super important that you become a part of the community that you're covering.
Well, plus that's how you develop your sources, right?
Sure.
So when you call people understand that you've been here for a long time. You bring perspective that isn't going to twist their words or isn't going to. I mean, you see them, so you're absolutely right. Going to be fair.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to burn anybody. I might see them in Publix tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make anybody look stupid.
Yeah.
That's not my goal. I mean, if they do something stupid, I can't do anything about it.
Yeah,
but you know what I'm saying. I'm not trying to ever.
Yeah.
That's why I don't try to twist things into controversy that doesn't really exist. I have no interest in that. That's just petty things. I have no interest in that. A big dispute, yeah, for sure, I want to cover that, but I'm not going to turn something that's maybe a disagreement or a perspective how to do things into some giant thing. That's not what I do. I'm not interested in that.
Yeah. So, how do you see journalism moving forward? Because it's, to me, that's an industry that has just completely changed. And now we have AI and, do bots write stories? I mean, how do you, what the heck is the future of journalism on a local level?
I'm frightened, honestly.
I can't picture it.
I don't know what's going to happen. I wish I knew. I think as you start to get these big companies that think they can do everything with a machine, I think it's going to open up more opportunities for the small, I would say, called like a mom and pop type of shop. I think you're going to see, and we have some of that here in St. Johns County, and some of those people are doing a decent job. I think you're going to see more opportunities for that sort of thing because people will crave that actual human connection.
Well, I think that's what the 904 Now morning show does. Yeah. They bring in
and
people.
I think but it's going to be so fragmented, right? I don't think you're ever going to see like not that we dominated, we certainly did not, but like a St. Augustine Record thing where you have, gosh, what do we have at our height? Maybe, 25 people or something working there.
Well, you did
kind of covering things. Yeah. I mean, I think that's gone. I think it's going to be fragmented. I think you're going to see people that do really good things in obviously all online. You're going to see people have this niche here, and then someone else going to have this niche here, and someone else going to have this niche here, and that's how it's going to be. But I think there'll always be that opportunity because people will see through the AI garbage, really quickly.
Well, we hope they will.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not everyone will, but people will crave that. I think that actual human connection with things, and people want to read about these small local businesses and this feature kind of things, and what somebody's doing to how do they got their start opening this restaurant or something like that, saving their pennies together, and putting this together. People love those type of stories because they remind us of what we're all going through, right?
Yeah.
And I love writing those kind of stories. Yeah. And the readership shows it. I have the metrics to show that people do like that sort of thing. And you can't replicate that with a robot, not yet that I know of. And so I think Yeah, I think it's going to be harder to find what's really going on when it comes to like government and that sort of thing, because there can be lots of voices, right? And as AI becomes more, more available, there's going to be more and more of these. I think there's going to be a lot of truly fake news sites
don't
coming around.
Don't forget too that AI pulls from your stories,
right?
So you're providing AI with its info,
but it can pick and choose, right?
Oh,
what
sure.
it uses,
yeah. But think about that. You're actually providing AI with its learning capability to create what it's creating by what you're producing, and you can't control that.
No.
How crazy is that?
Yeah, it's wild, and I've heard of places going where they just want to throw all the information in there, let AI do the story for them. Of course, we do not do that, by the way, ever.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's ridiculous. I do wonder, though, how much, I'm going to sound like an old grandma here, but how much younger people, the writing skills that it takes to do what you do, how much they're going to bring to the table in 20 years. Is that gone because they've grown up in a digital AI age, or do they still know how to truly write? I was an English major,
Mostly
so I know
no.
what went into what you do because
right.
I majored in English as well. I just can't picture in what today's fifth grader is going to come out of college or whatever, high school. Maybe I don't know what they're going to do after high school, but how they're going to learn the skills that we had to learn in order to truly create write our own stories.
Yeah, I'm worried about that too. I hope that you can use AI as a tool, but not as a crutch.
You kind of have to use it. You can't ignore it.
Sure.
Right?
And that's fine. But yeah, use it as a tool and not a crutch. And that's where that fine line is.
Yeah.
Don't just let it, write your term paper for you. Because otherwise you're not learning anything.
Yeah. I just can't fathom what it's going to be like. And I guess that's a good thing. But looking back, is there a favorite story that you've done over the years?
I would not say there's a favorite story. There's a favorite story I like to tell, and I'll try to get it quickly. So, and it's not the kind of story that I like to write, which is why I like to tell the story. It was a tragic story, and I don't mean to not be light about it. But what happened was there was a person who was a drunk driver, and they were wildly out of control and hit someone's house. And the driver died, and they hit the house, and it happened to be the bedroom. And this couple was in their house, and they were hit by the car, sleeping in their bed. Terrible thing.
Remember this?
And they were both injured, and they both went to the hospital. And so the next morning, my boss says, "Oh, just call them at the hospital." I'm like, "You've got to be kidding me!" Like, no, call them at the hospital. Okay, very uncomfortable thing for me. Incredibly uncomfortable thing for me. But I did my job, and I called up the person, and I want to tell you, she could not have been nicer about the whole thing. She's like,
That's the Southern
I figured people would be curious about what happened. It's like they see a big hole in my wall of my house, and they know the police reports and whatever. And she was the most gracious person I think I've ever met in my life to tell her story. And I try not to be too intrusive, whatever. But she took the call from her hospital bed and told me about kind of what happened and, that sort of thing, and how her and her husband or boyfriend or whatever it was, were recovering. And blew me away how accommodating that person was. They did not have to be. They could have cussed me out instead.
Well, I'll also say, though, that having spoken with you many times, you're just very respectful, and you're not a pushy journalist. That's just not you at all.
No, it is not. So that is not my thing.
You were probably the right person to have given that assignment to.
I hope so. And I saw the person again later, and they were still very nice to me. I think they're just a nice person. I just got lucky that day.
I don't remember that story, and I've been here for so long.
Yeah, it was St. Augustine Beach, yeah.
Wow. Then I really should have known it, because I lived at the beach for years and years. I cannot remember that story. Huh. Well, I want to thank you for coming in, and we talk about what AI is going to do and how jobs are going to be going away or recreated or whatever, and you are in a field where I truly just cannot imagine So
I know it's very frightening.
but I'm glad that you're still working. I'm glad that you're still covering St. Johns County, because as I said, you bring a perspective and a skill set to the table that is different from anybody else that I see out there. And so if you aren't reading the Jacksonville Business Journal and reading Stuart's stories about St. Augustine and St. Johns County, you're really missing out, because the perspective on his stories is so unique and thorough, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate how you cover stories.
Well, thank you. This is where I live, man.
Yeah.
You know, I respect the people who live here.
And I'm so happy that the Jacksonville Business Journal brought you on.
Me too.
I actually think that the 904 Now should bring you on once in a while and on a regular basis and talk with you, because, like I said, they do it. They're doing a good job in the digiral space as much as
they have offered.
Space.
We just haven't put together a schedule.
You need to come on.
Yeah.
It needs to be a show.
Good people.
Yep. All right. Thank you for tuning in today. I appreciate it, and we'll see you next time.